Hey, boys and girls, third time's a charm. You don't know this, but this has taken me a lot longer than it should. I hope my video finds you well. I hope you can laugh at my tragedy, and I miss you. I got some news for you. We're grounded for another month. The governor grounded us. I blame you. Personally, I blame all of you for obvious reasons. Good news is, though, is we're going to have youth group anyway, even though you're dirty little creatures. I love you still, and I would like to see you Sunday, that is tonight, at 6 p.m. I have a game planned. We'll see if it works. So show up. It's going to be a Zoom meeting again, just in case you haven't had this memorized by now. There it is. That's how you get into the meeting. You just go to the website on your web browser, or you download the app on your phone or tablet. You join the meeting. You put in this number. It will let you in. The password is 0123. Don't tell anyone. For security reasons. You can connect with us on WhatsApp. You can annoy me at any time of the day on WhatsApp. Just join the RVAC Student Ministries group, or RVAC Students is what it's called, and let the harassment begin. We also have a Facebook group, RVAC Student Ministries page. Parents and students, if you're on Facebook, join us. That's where I give a lot of information. Something I didn't make a slide for is that we have a blood drive coming up. For more information on that, go to that Facebook group page. Look it up. You can go to the River Valley Alliance Church actual Facebook page too and see it there. But 16-year-old and older, you can give. If you're 16 or 17, you need parental permission. I can give you a permission slip so you can be ready to go when you get there. You can also go online and get an appointment. All of that stuff can be done online. So head on over to the Facebook page and sign up there. 1 pint of your blood saves 3 people's lives, up to 3 people. It's super important for us to do all that we can as a church to make sure that we are affecting the world around us for good. That's my number. You can call me. You can text me. You can ask me questions. You can give me your great ideas for games, for youth group. Or if you're bored, it's an option. You can text me. I won't get your text late at night. I just won't. But if you ever need me, the people who know my number already know this. If you have an emergency that you think Pastor Michael can help with, and yes, I refer to myself in the third person, okay, to make myself seem more important than I am. But if you call twice in a row and within 5 minutes, it will actually go through. It's an automatic setting on my phone. So if you find that there's a reason you might need me, call twice after 9 p.m. Okay, we're in Matthew 9 through 13. That is the focus of our lesson on this day today. I'm going to go ahead and read. We're going to do it in 2 different sections. I'm going to read chapter 9, verse 9 first. We'll talk about that. And then we'll read the remaining verses, and we'll talk about that. It's kind of a 2-parter. So he starts out by saying, as Jesus passed on from there, that is his hometown of Nazareth, where he's just healed a paralytic man whose friends brought him to him. If you haven't heard all about that, go back to the playlist on YouTube and, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Isn't that what YouTubers say? Yeah, so do that. As Jesus passed from there, that is Nazareth, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. Now, it was probably in a port town. Matthew is a tax collector. He is sitting there at his booth, and we see kind of a similar situation to what we've already seen in Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus calls Peter and Andrew, 2 brothers, and James and John, another set of brothers, from their fishing business. Very similar pattern. So Jesus is there. He comes to the tax booth because it was probably he was probably collecting taxes from all the ships coming in to a certain port, something like that. We don't really know, but that's what best kind of fits. And Jesus just simply says, "Follow me." And Matthew's like, "Okay," and does it immediately without hesitation. And that says a lot. We don't know whether or not he had previous contact with Jesus. We don't know. And in all of the accounts, in fact, this is the only time he's called Matthew. In the other two accounts, in Mark and Luke, he's called Levi. But again, they would have had a Jewish name and a Greek name, especially since he was a tax collector. Now, some of the things that we need to know as well, what he was leaving behind. He was leaving behind a lucrative career. Now, this career did not win him any friends, but it made him very wealthy. So as a tax collector, he was leaving this lucrative career behind, even though nobody likes the tax man. Okay, April 15th just passed. And here's the thing. Here's the way the world works, kids. Governments don't work. They don't do anything to earn money. They take your money. If you want a governing body, a governing authority, you have to pay up. That's the way it's worked from time immemorial. That is just the way every government has ever worked, whether it was a king, whether it was, or like us, a constitutional republic. Okay, it's always been taxes. Nobody likes the tax man. But in Israel, even more so. Here's why. Matthew, as a Jewish man, was seen as being complicit, as partnering with the oppressive regime of the Romans. He was taking money from fellow Jews, and the way he earned his money was by taking a little off the top, or adding basically a little extra to their taxes. He's sitting there doing the calculator. You owe exactly 50% of your wages and taxes, or whatever. And everything he got above a certain number, basically he got to keep. So he made money as a tax collector, not by being employed by the Roman government, but by taking extra, whatever he could get. Now, this made him an outcast, a second-class Jewish citizen. Equally as bad as the Gentile oppressive Roman government that was hindering their way of life. So it's not a good thing. Jesus says, "Follow me." Matthew does. And the very next thing we see is that Matthew throws Jesus a party. It was probably sometime later. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. In verse 10, "And as Jesus reclined at table in the house," this is Matthew's house, "behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?' But when he heard it, he said," this is when Jesus heard it, Jesus said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means." And he quotes, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Now, Matthew throws Jesus a party. And the Pharisees, the very next thing we see is that he's there with a bunch of tax collectors like Matthew and a bunch of sinners. Unnamed, unknown sins, but just sinners, okay? And something you need to know is that this was probably a separate event. It probably wasn't the moment after Jesus said, "Follow me." Matthew followed him. They went to his house and had a party. Matthew invited all of his sinner friends. Okay, that's not necessarily the way it went down. But another thing that you need to understand is that the Pharisees probably weren't at this party. One of the ways we know that Pharisees means separated ones. They prided themselves on their extreme aloofness from the rest of the world. They weren't sinners like everyone else. They adhered to these strict rituals, and they dressed a certain way. This is a picture of them wearing what a Pharisee would wear. Around his arm, you can see bands and that little pointy box on his head. Those are called phylacteries. They would wear what's called the Shema from Deuteronomy chapter 6. They would have handwritten little parcels in there. that had the Shema, and they'd wear it on their head and on their hands, and they'd walk through the street, and when they would fast, they would, oh, my belly, I'm hungry. And when they would pray, they would lift up their hands in public and show everyone how pious and holy they were, because they were the separate ones. I'm not painting them in a very good light, but this was their religion. And I use that word on purpose. So it was likely after the party at Matthew's house that the Pharisees approached him and said, approached the disciples of Jesus and said, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" You can almost hear the venom behind those words. You're eating with who? The tax man? You're eating with a bunch of wicked sinners? Unclean people? Unholy people? I'm going to pause right here for a second. What should our Bible studies look like? What should our church services look like? What should our daily dealings look like? Who should feel comfortable around us? We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's an interesting thing that Jesus is surrounded and comfortable at a party with the tax man and his sinner friends. Pharisees ask, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" A Pharisee meaning separated ones. They would not have associated with them, so they probably weren't at this party. And then what Jesus does next is he says first, "Those who are well have no need of a physician." This is a common proverb, not from the book of Proverbs, you understand, but a proverb nonetheless, a quippy little saying that was full of wisdom. The sick are the ones who need the physician, right? Not the healthy. So Jesus is saying, I'm not wasting my time with the healthy. And then he quotes Hosea 6:6 to them. And the reason I've included here, as I look at it in my ESV, my English Standard Version in the Old Testament, it's translated from what's called the Masoretic text from Hebrew into English. You can see there it's slightly different. "For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice." He just quotes the first half of this verse. But the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation, the ancient Greek translation, so even back in the day, there were a lot of Greek-speaking Jews, and we're talking like 400 BC was when this was translated, the Septuagint, that is. There was a lot of Jewish people who, because of various reasons, did not speak Hebrew anymore, but many of them spoke the Greek of the day. So they had a Bible translated from Hebrew into Greek, and Jesus and the New Testament authors often quote from it, and it sounds like this: "I will have mercy rather than sacrifice." I just threw that in there. That's free. That's for you. You don't need to pay me for that. No extra payment for me. Thank you. Okay? My pleasure. So Jesus quotes this to them. And the reason I'm showing you this is because you need to understand yourself what this means. Jesus says, go learn what this means. So I'm going to tell you what it means too. Hosea is a prophet that was commanded by God to marry a prostitute. Middle schoolers, if you don't know what that is, that's a question for mommy or daddy, okay? Don't ask me. I'm going to leave it at that. This woman was unfaithful in her marriage to Hosea. She wandered. She strayed. That is a theme that carries throughout the book that Hosea writes. Because Israel, God's bride, has been unfaithful to him, has gone after other gods, and has favored other worldviews and value systems over their God, the one who loved them dearly. And he's saying in chapter 6, he's pronouncing these punishments that are to come as a result. And what God is telling the Israelites here is that I don't want sacrifice and offerings. That's not really what I'm after. Because you can do the religious things without having a heart of love or mercy. People do it every day. They adhere to a certain guideline, a certain set of rules, but their heart is not actually in it. It is tradition, and that's it. And Jesus says, I would have mercy rather than sacrifice. He says, rather than your laws and your adherence to these laws, rather than you being so separate that you're no good to anyone, rather than you doing all of these things and wearing these boxes on your heads and hands and dressing a certain way and acting a certain way and singing certain songs and doing certain things, blah, 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 blah. He says, I want your heart. I want to lavish mercy on you. I want to show you my love. I want a relationship between you and I. So when Jesus concludes by saying, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners, this is how you should read it. This is how you should understand it. By righteous, what Jesus is saying is the self-righteous. I did not come to call the self-righteous. People who have deemed themselves worthy because they could adhere to some sort of pattern of behavior, because they could fake it on the outside. But instead, I've come for sinners. And when you hear sinners, you should hear outcasts. Outcasts are the people that the self-righteous have deemed unworthy. The self-righteous have deemed themselves worthy, and they have deemed a whole other group of people, literally everyone else but them, as unworthy. Here's the lesson. Jesus was comfortable around sinners and tax collectors. Jesus was called the friend of sinners. Jesus was the great physician, and you can't be a great physician if there are no sick people. Jesus came for the sinners, the outcast. Jesus wants to change the lives of people, and it tells me so much about him that they were comfortable around him. Sometimes we feel like sinners need to come into our churches and be uncomfortable. They need to come into our assemblies, whether that's Bible study, youth group, whatever, you name it, and they need to feel weird and left out. Why is it this group of sinners was so comfortable listening to Jesus? What was it about him that made him worth listening to? What was so compelling about him? And church, loved ones, how do we get that? How do we show that to the world that desperately needs Jesus? Remember, he died for them. And if you believe that, do you believe that he deserves to have them? If so, you have to go and be effective in the world. Make sure that you're affecting the world, of course. And the way that you do that, the way that you prepare your heart, of course, is what? You pray. You spend time with Jesus in prayer. You spend time with Jesus, getting to know him in his word. You spend time getting to know people who want to know Jesus too. Of course we have to come together. Of course we're going to gather strength as we study our Bibles together and grow together. But if you want to be effective ministers of the gospel, you have to go and risk it. Do you have atheist friends? Do you have agnostic friends? And hey, some of you guys are homeschooled. Some of you guys are, I understand that you're a kid, you don't have a car, you don't have a choice where you get to go and stuff like that. You don't have a choice. And sometimes if your parents say to you, that kid is bad news, you can't hang around him or her, you need to obey them. But what I am saying, though, is you all have cousins, you all have people in your lives that you can affect and get them closer to Jesus by living your life like Jesus. So that's the challenge from this passage as I see it. Jesus is saying here, he has come for the purpose of calling the outcast. Not the people who are adhering to religious laws and the strictures of all that entails, but the people who actually want to know God and want to have a relationship with him. That's who Jesus has come for. So let us, dear loved ones, let us bring the gospel to them. Let us be salt and light in this world as Jesus has called us already in the book of Matthew. I love you. I miss you. I hope to see you tonight at youth group. And if you need anything, let me know. Holla at your boy. Man, that was cringy. Oh my gosh. Have a good day.